Hello and welcome to the Grit Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. This is your host, Bryce Moose, otherwise known as the Commissioner and the only two-timer. All right, today we are doing a Week 3 Power Rankings. Decided to do it now. We've had a couple trades going out. I thought it would be fun to hop on here and kind of talk about this live and see what everybody thinks as a reaction. But starting us off today, a team I'm moving back to first in the Power Rankings is going to be Will. The reason that I'm going to put Will in the number one overall spot in our league power rankings is just because of what we saw Jamar do on Monday night. If Jamar is going to continue to, be that guy, it was good to see him get back to what we know he can do. And I think it was 11 or 12 catches, 140 yards. It just really makes Will's team very scary. Now, Devontae Smith has been extremely inconsistent his entire career. It's just kind of the nature of the Eagles' offense. But that's okay. Will's surviving these mediocre games. No problem. He's got a stable of running backs with Jerome Ford, now kind of the guy in Cleveland, as well as Roschon Johnson. He's very deep at running back. I kind of think he should trade one of them. He might be a little too stubborn to do that now. Maybe he's just waiting. I don't know. But he's deep at receiver. Cooper Kupp coming back very soon as well. And, he's sitting here at 2-1 and has not really had to try all that hard to get there. I think when we see his team at full strength, I just think this team is just clearly the best right now. With Travis Kelce back to playing his full amount of snaps, we expect Kupp off the IR soon. I think Will deserves to be in first right now. Second on our power rankings today is going to be Austin. I will scroll down here a little bit so you can see his overall stats. Austin coming off of a loss to Zach, who only played 8 players. So why do you have him second? I just think the weekly consistency of his team is so much better than everybody other than Will right now. Again, we've seen Drake London pretty much have these horrible performances for 2.5 weeks. He had a good first half in that week 2 game, but he sold Jordan Addison this week. He got a couple picks for it. Immediately after that, he traded for James Cook. Now Austin has some running back options. It definitely looks like Breece Hall is getting ramped up here. Seems like he's back to full strength. I honestly am wondering if Austin's going to be selling Breece if he has a couple more inconsistent games. I think James Cook is definitely good enough to start as your RB2. The Patriots have had a very brutal schedule, and I think that's kind of why Ramondre has been very quiet this year. But I do think that he's going to have some better days ahead. I'm not really concerned about Ramondre. He's still playing a bunch, still catching a bunch of passes. When the Patriots aren't playing the Dolphins and the Jets defenses, I think this is going to look a little different. So as their schedule eases up a little bit, it doesn't this week against the Cowboys, but as their schedule eases up a little bit during the season, I definitely think Ramondre is going to be he's going to be just fine. Amon-Ra also had another classic 9 catch for 100-yard game this past week, and Justin Jefferson just doing what he does best. Also, Josh Allen, outside of that week 1 disaster, has been amazing this year, absolutely amazing. So I think Austin's team is definitely set up very well, and the reason I have him 2 above some other names that we're going to get to is I think his depth is just a little bit better. Austin really does. He has the kind of team that can kind of withstand an injury or two, and he's definitely somebody who could continue to sell some pieces here. Like I mentioned, if he wants to move on from Breece Hall, I definitely think there's a lot of people who'd be interested in buying Breece Hall. But some of the depth he has I really like, and I think just the rest of his team is just very solid and consistent. He also is not out of moves, which I think is a very good spot to be in. Will's been very hesitant to make another trade after kind of going all in over the summer. The team in third place here today has just made a bunch of moves, or really just one big move that happened a couple hours ago here. But Austin's still got plenty of stuff he can kind of work out as the season goes along. Doesn't want to put all his eggs in one basket. I think he's really set up well here. Third on my list is going to be the Hermanos. Now, Zach might be wondering, how am I not first? I'm 3-0. I think he's first in points scored. I just won without Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb over your number 2 in the power rankings. This trade today with Chris Godwin is it's something. I really don't even know how else to put it. What's interesting is Zach has basically gone all in week three, right? It just struck me as a trade that you kind of make right on the trade deadline when you need that last piece to kind of win everything. And making this trade right now basically sets himself up for you are praying your guy gets up when he gets tackled because behind his starting lineup is a bench worse than mine right now. Um, like a bench that's worse than Grant's bench. Like it's really really bad. He's got no players. He's got no picks. I believe Zach is out of picks completely um, over the next three drafts. So if you like a guy on Zach's roster, you're going to have to just buy him off of his team and probably lose that trade. So get used to seeing the same guys here for Zach. I do like the addition of Jared Goff behind Jalen Hurts, who's kind of been inconsistent this year. We haven't seen those huge Jalen Hurts games yet. I'm sure they're coming, but um, nothing crazy this year out of him yet. Uh, I think I would put Zach first on like a weekly basis. So if my power rankings was simply just who scores the most on a weekly basis right now, it'd probably be Zach first. The difference is like every other team has like different moves they can make in case something goes wrong down the stretch. Zach is very, very stuck here. His really only move would be saying, okay, well, I'm going to sell Saquon or Nick Chubb or Chris Godwin from now and then go tier down at receiver. But I don't think he's ever going to want to do that because he's going to try to want to get the most points out of his lineup. So that one does not make a lot of sense to me right now. I think it's just a really weird timing. I don't hate the move. I just hate the timing of the move. Not that Wandale and Calvin Austin were like the best, bench guys, but they gave you somebody you could definitely play in the pinch. And now Zach really doesn't have much he can play in the pinch. Remember, he already sold Romeo Dobbs. Um, he's just out of receivers. I'd have to go and like literally look at his team to tell you. Uh, Here we go. I'm pulling this thing up. I want everybody to see this. He literally has Jaleel McLaughlin, Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, who's hurt. Now, Montgomery will be back. Saquon will be back. But he's going to be starting. Josh Kelly probably moves out of the starting lineup. So you're looking at Chase Claypool, Chris Godwin, and Debo, his receiver, I think. But this is trade isn't showing up here. Yeah, I think he's like literally out of these picks now. But yeah, okay. So I had Zach at 3, and I really don't see him going much higher this rest of the season because literally one injury happens and it's curtains. All right, Jonah, I have as our number 4 today. Now, Jonah got 2 bad weeks out of Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. It's not going to happen all the time. Jahmyr Gibbs finally got some carries with Montgomery out. It didn't really go too well. But the 2 targets is the real concerning thing. I mean, the Lions were jumping up and screaming when they drafted him, talking about how much they're going to use him in the passing game. And then you throw him 2 targets, and I don't know. Like, we never expected him to score a lot of touchdowns. We just kind of expected him to get the ball a lot in space, and they haven't really found ways to do that. Now, Jonah kind of lived off this last week with Keenan Allen's, whatever that is, 47-point fantasy day. Good for him. Alex Madison also had a very nice day. I like Jonah in 4 because I think his team is very solid. Like, he's not going to have a lot of bad weeks. He's got a lot of consistent guys on his team, and he's definitely going to win enough to make the playoffs. He's still got Deontay Johnson waiting to come back as well, and some additional picks he can sell towards the deadline if he really wants to upgrade something. But I think for now he's fine with this current roster. Javonte Williams is probably the next guy I would see Jonah maybe moving off of. DeAndre Hopkins really the Titans' entire team has been a disaster. But I do think his team is set up very well to just continue to be solid right now. I don't think he has anything to worry about with making a push or anything like that. I just think his team is very good. And Lamar is going to be better as we go along too. Lamar had another big day because of the 2 rushing touchdowns, but he hasn't really thrown the touchdowns yet. The Ravens are also a team that's kind of had some weird games this season, but as they get more comfortable, I think I think Jonah makes sense in our fourth spot today. Fifth, I have Jacob. Jacob just had the most points we've seen in grit this season with like 180 something. And that was off the back of starting two rookies, Zay Flowers and Tank Dell. Um, Now, Tank Dell is not going to have 145 yards and a touchdown every week. And Zay Flowers caught, I think, 5 passes in the fourth quarter in overtime. Also, Miles Sanders scores his first touchdown of the year. But when Justin Herbert's going to throw the ball 50 times against the Vikings defense, yeah, you're probably going to have a pretty good day. The big concern here to me is Garrett Wilson. And I think the guy that we kind of expected to be Jacobs' number one receiver this year, somebody who was top 5 in overall dynasty rankings, is just kind of being torpedoed by the Jets offense. I like Garrett Wilson a lot as a talent. It's just I don't think it's going to happen this year playing with Zach Wilson. Now, maybe the Jets do something to kind of upgrade that position, but how many touchdowns can you realistically expect for him? I kind of think Garrett Wilson's somebody you'd be looking to sell, but given Jacobs' absolute love for him, I just don't see it happening. Brandon Ayuk being out, Quentin Johnston stepping in with Mike Williams being hurt as well gives Jonah plenty of guys to play. I think normally Ayuk's going to play instead of Tank Dell or Miles Sanders, just depending on the matchup. But Jacob's definitely got a deep team. I just think you probably just saw his best week of the season. Might be the best week of the season we see of any grit team, but I'm worried that some of these guys are peaking too early. Kind of my only fear. Okay. Sixth, I have Blake today. Now, Blake just did a big trade with Zach to, or not with Zach, with Xander. He acquired Jakobi Meyers and sold off a bunch of second, third round picks. I have Blake at 6 today because DeAndre Swift has really kind of shown something I didn't realize he still had in him. And if DeAndre Swift is going to be getting, 15 plus touches behind that offensive line for the Eagles, it's going to be a really, really good season for him. Dallas Goedert also had some nice games. I mean, even 9 points at tight end right now is so good. Michael Pittman has seen 10 targets or more in all 3 games. That's including Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson. He's looking great. This Colts offense, we haven't talked too much about the Colts in general, but the Colts actually look like they're kind of a good little team. I mean, they're 2-1. Their franchise quarterback has played 5 quarters this year, and their only loss was opening day against the Jaguars in a game that they were leading after 3 quarters. So this Colts team actually easily could be 3-0. And I mean, they're coming off a win in Baltimore, with Gardner Minshew playing. So definitely impressive. Now, Tyreek is either going to be wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 overall in fantasy. Terry McLaurin's kind of getting ramped up coming off that injury now. And he's definitely got some pieces now here. Like Zay Jones was hurt. He didn't even play James Conner this week. And then Tua just sitting on his bench. I mean, Romeo Dobbs as well. George Kittle, Zach Ertz has been very good this year too. And then Blake definitely has some picks as well. So adding Jakobi Meyers, so he doesn't have to play these Josh Reynolds or probably not play Brandon Cooks, I think makes a lot of sense. But Blake's got a very solid team. I think he's set up very, very well to make the playoffs this year. And he sits here at 1-2. And I mentioned this because I believe Blake plays Austin this week, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look. Week 4. Yeah, Blake plays Austin. Okay. The reason that that's important is that if Blake loses this week, and I know Austin hasn't even set his lineup yet, but if Blake loses this week, he's going to fall to 1-3. Does Blake start to get scared and opt to tank? I don't know. You never know with Blake, but I'm going to put him in our in our 6th spot for right now. Okay. All right, number 7, I have the guy who has both of the Dolphins running backs, Mr. Matt Burt. Now, Matt just had a monster week. No question about it, right? And You might be saying, well, why do you have Matt at 7 coming off this huge week? Well, losing Mike Williams really hurts him, but he definitely still has some guys on here. Remember, Jonathan Taylor still hasn't come back yet. I like Matt's team. I just don't know if we can continue to expect this from Raheem Mostert. And you say, well, Matt has Achane as well. Matt's definitely somebody who could really rise up these ranks really quickly. I'm just keeping him in 7 right now. His team feels a lot like Jacob's team to me in a way where he's got a bunch of young and ascending receivers. T. Higgins did not play good last night, and Njoku's kind of been very average this year. Christian Kirk kind of benefited from Zay Jones getting hurt, and CeeDee Lamb, I don't believe, has scored a touchdown yet. But Matt's team definitely has the upside. Christian Watson still has not come back, and Devon Achane can always step into that lineup. The biggest thing, though, for me is when Jonathan Taylor comes back, what is Matt going to do? Matt actually strikes me as somebody who's going to make a trade soon. He doesn't need all these guys because they're not really depth pieces. He can start them. I don't know if he wants to start Josh Palmer normally, but if he felt okay with it, Christian Watson could be out the door. Maybe DK is out the door. Maybe he sells T. Higgins or even CD if he thinks he can get by with T and DK. So I have Matt in 7th right now. That might be a little too low, sitting here at 2-1, given that monster performance. I just don't think you're going to see 90 points out of the same backfield every week. So Matt will be in 7th for now. All right, moving on to 8th. 8th, I have the can kicker, Mr. Jordan. It's hard to put Jordan higher than this. And, I think his team is actually okay, right? He's got this kind of weird setup where he has a bunch of players from the same team, all over, right? So he's got 3 Saints. He's got really the whole NFC South on his roster. And then he's got Mahomes and Pacheco with 3 Saints all in the starting lineup. Jerry Jeudy has been a total disappointment this year. I literally think Jerry Judy's probably on his way out of Denver. He really strikes me as somebody they would try to trade mid-season, which might help him. Who knows? Kyle Pitts caught 5 balls last week, and it felt like he won the Super Bowl. He doesn't really provide you much upside right now, as much as we all want to think that he will or he can. Jordan's sitting here with where is he? Luke Musgrave on his taxi squad, which he can promote whenever. I guess my question is Jordan's never going to actually start Cole Kmet. So why is he on the team? Jalen Tolbert. I mean, I don't know. I don't think his bench is very good. A bunch of weird starts on here. I don't feel like you'd be comfortable starting any of these guys. Gallup's been bad this year. Lazard's torpedoed without Aaron Rodgers. Hodgson's been bad this year. Terrace Marshall's not even playing for the Panthers. And Jamal Williams is on IR. Now, McKinnon, as the season goes along, always gets a little bit better just based on what the Chiefs do. And the Charbonnet has seen a snap count increase this season. I just don't know. Kenneth Walker is so good. I don't know how they take him off the field right now. But I have Jordan in 8th just because, I don't think this team has the overall ceiling that some of these other teams in Grit does. We saw this Mike Evans, monster game. We've seen Olave have some big games already this season. I just can Michael Thomas, Jerry Jeudy, and Jordan Addison match what some of the flex spots of the top guys in this league have? I don't know. I don't know. If I was Jordan, I'd be trying to sell Kyle Pitts because I don't know what you're doing with all these tight ends. What's the point? All right, 9th. I have Alec at 9, and I actually like Alec's team, I think, a little bit more than a lot of people do. I talked about this offseason, but Alec's in 9th because he has the 9th most points scored this season, which is kind of frustrating because he played this inactive Aaron Jones. I think he'd be higher on here. But the reality is that Alec sits in 1 and 2. Derrick Henry has been a disaster. He's got Zach Moss, who I feel like he could probably trade right now for an early second-round pick if he wanted to. DJ Moore's in this miserable situation. Amari Cooper's just had two back-to-back monster weeks, and Alec really hasn't had anything to show for it. He beat me, but I mean, every person in the league would have beat me last week. Um, Kincaid's playing a ton. He just hasn't really done that much yet. Maybe Miami's the week they kind of get him going. Lockett's been good. Kyron Williams has been good up until Monday night. Now he's got C.J. Stroud, Mac Jones, and Brock Purdy, which is going to be like a weekly decision for him. Honestly, like I think I'd just be playing C.J. Stroud every week. But this team strikes me as a team that's like competing for the sixth spot in the playoffs. And if you are 1-2 with a lot of youth, also Alec has, I believe he has two firsts. Yeah, he has two firsts and two seconds. So if Alec wants to sell like a Derrick Henry or something for picks, I think it's like a really good time to do it. Because he sits here 1-2, and then this week Alec plays Jacob, right? So if you lose this, I talked about it with Blake earlier, but if Alec loses this, he's going to fall to 1-3. And then I looked at this earlier because I was curious. Alec and Blake actually play each other in week 5. So one of these teams, assuming this week doesn't have an upset, is going to be 1-4. Okay. So that's why Alec is sitting here at 9th. I think he's more likely than Blake to be 1-4. I actually think Blake has a pretty good shot of winning this week against Austin, but he's probably going to be a slight underdog based on projection. So who knows? All right, 10th is going to be myself. I'm going to go with myself at the 10th spot, even though I am second to last in points scored, not 10th. Grant's actually 10th. But the reason I'm putting myself here is I actually think that my team is just better than these other two bottom teams. And, look, like we've basically seen nothing this year from Jahan Dotson and Treylon Burks. Basically the same situation, just different jerseys. They're the number 2 receiver on a really, really bad passing offense with a quarterback who takes a ton of sacks and a team that can't run the ball. It's probably the exact same team. The Commanders are the Titans out east. So yeah, like both these guys, like what I find interesting about both of them is we came to the season with them both kind of being around the 50th overall player in Dynasty, and both of their values have kind of tanked a little bit just based on early season production. The positive, though, is that they don't leave the field. I mean, both these guys are playing 98% of the snaps. I was kind of hoping I would just see more to this point in the season, which is really frustrating. Not that I wanted to trade them, but guys, I really wanted to be starting every single week and watching them develop, and it's just kind of feels like they're stuck right now. 3 more weeks until Jameson Williams gets back, so we'll see if he matters at all. Trey Palmer's playing a ton for the Bucs, just hasn't really done much yet. Michael Mayer's playing a good bit for the Raiders, hasn't done much yet. I just have a bunch of guys who just like haven't had that breakout yet. Marvin Mims is still playing 10 snaps a game for the Broncos, and he's first on the team in fantasy points. So he's been a monster. Jaden Reed has 3 touchdowns this year. He looks really good. JSN is kind of getting eased in. Remember, JSN was supposed to be on the IR for the first 4 weeks of the season, kind of fought through his injury. Like any production he gives me right now is just a total bonus. I really didn't even expect to see him until week 5, so that's good. Tutu's been great this year. George Pickens has been very solid. But, again, if I was sitting here today telling you Tutu Atwell, I think he's actually my number 1 scoring wide receiver out of all this stable of receivers that I have that are young and exciting. I just would have told you something went horribly wrong. Even with Jaylen Warren and Tyler Algier starting, I still think my team is better than the 2 others. These guys are at least going to get you a couple points every week, somewhere between like 8 to 12. Not expecting much. Again, this team is trying to lose, but I think I actually have a better team than 2 teams in the league. So is what it is. Anthony Richardson also should be back this week, and I think with him back, like I'm going to be getting around 20 to 25 points out of quarterback every week instead of the Sam Howell 7. So I just think I'm going to end up scoring more points than these other 2 losers. 11th, I have Xander. Xander just sold off Jacoby Myers, which is fine. I have no problem with that. He's actually gotten a couple later picks for these guys. He's acquiring these late picks. The only first he owns is 2026 right now. But his team's just really bad. And what happens is when Xander's trying to sell players to acquire picks, it just makes his pick, like Jordan has this free shot at almost a guaranteed top three pick, right? And because of how Xander has torpedoed his lineup, it's basically locked Jordan into this. Jordan can sit here and sell everything else he has and still knows he has a top three pick. He can push all in, still pick top three. He can tank, still pick top three. That's why I don't understand what Jordan's doing. But um, Damian Pierce has been bad. Samaje Perine has been bad. The Broncos have been bad. Elijah Moore had a good week this past week. Thielen had a good week this past week. Nico Collins has been great this year, and Rashee Rice played the most snaps he's played so far. Burrow finally had a decent game. So I just think that Xander's team is like good enough to score like 121 week and knock somebody off if things kind of go right for him. The reality is that he just doesn't really have much exciting or many exciting players on this team. Jalen Hyatt, I kind of expected to see a little bit more. Maybe on Monday night he can have a little breakout. He had the 2 long catches in the Cardinals game, but hasn't really done much since. But yeah, I think this team is the 11th best team right now. I still think like on paper he could beat me or Grant on a weekly basis. That's just a kind of a coin flip matchup, but I think my upside's higher than his lineup. If people disagree with that, that's fine. I just think that once my guys kind of get everything going, like my team I think is slightly better than his. Okay, and then last I have Grant. No shock here. There's the trade. Trade shows now. Okay. Yeah. So Grant, I got to look at this lineup for the first time. I mean, this is Calvin Austin, Alec Pierce, Wan'Dale Robinson, Dalvin Cook, Cam Akers. I mean, this is just my goodness. I guess it's possible that Grant could win a game. Like it would take like Wan'Dale having like a 17-point fantasy day. I guess it's not impossible because he did come back last week and caught a couple balls. Grant kind of tried to acquire some youth, but he did it in an interesting way. He's taking the young, like diminutive receivers, and Sam Laporta has been amazing. So the reason this team sits in 12th is like I can scroll through this bench for you guys, and you'll all see. I mean, this is like he doesn't have a good player on here. I mean, there's not like one good player. We go down to his picks, and he's got 3 seconds. So he's got my second and Xander. So he's going to have 2 very early seconds as well as Zach. So he'll have 3 top 15 picks and a 4th in the top 24 probably. It's not really enough to turn this around. I think his team's going to be pretty bad now for a couple years unless he wants to sell the number 1 overall pick. Wink, wink. But we'll see about Cam Akers. I just don't think that this team has like any upside at all. He's also like if one of these guys gets hurt, I mean he's playing a disaster lineup. So I don't know. I think right now Grant in 12 makes a lot of sense. Okay. Is there anything else I want to cover today? Let's see. We're coming up on 28 minutes. I guess I'll spend the last 2 minutes here talking about like I guess if you want to tank, and so this is the interesting idea, right? Normally in a dynasty league, we have a lot of teams set up like Alex's team and Matt's team, which is basically I have 2 different routes I can pick based on if I'm winning games or not, and then I either become a buyer or a seller towards the deadline. Our league has gone total polar opposites. I really thought I was going to be the only like full season tanker, which was why I was so comfortable selling Grant's pick. I didn't think he was going to like mail it in quite like he did. But normally you only have maybe one person who's trying to full tank and then a bunch of people who are hoping to kind of fight for the playoffs and see what happens. But when you have 9 teams who want to win and 3 teams who want to tank, it basically makes all of these lineups so good, right? So if you think about it like this, which is it's a start 9 league with 9 people trying to win, that means there's 81 starters who are all going to be pretty good in this league. So it's pretty unlikely that how much, the amount of gouging that I've done on my team and Grant's done and Xander has somehow done, that anybody off our team could like seriously help you win a championship this year. I mean, the only really out would be like if Gabe Davis, like if Stephon Diggs got hurt, maybe Gabe Davis like steps into a role for Grant, or like I don't know, Deontay Johnson's out for a long time, and George Pickens like kind of balloons into this weekly consistent top 24 wide receiver. Like, sure, maybe one of those guys could pull it off, but everybody's team is just really good, and if you don't have depth, you are selling yourself way short. Remember, so much changes week to week in fantasy football, and if you were not prepared for an injury, you're doing this wrong. So, like Zach survived the Nick Chubb injury, but he could have gotten Jerome Ford way before the Nick Chubb injury. And you look around the league and you say, well, okay, if you look at like honestly look at your own lineups and say, well, if the guy I'm relying on every week gets hurt, what do I do? So Cap doesn't own Elijah Mitchell, right? McCaffrey gets hurt, what does he do? Um, just those kind of examples, right? Um, Jordan's kind of betting on this entire Saints backfield. I think they're all going to play a little bit, and if it doesn't go really well playing with Jameis Winston at quarterback, like I don't know. I don't know. This is kind of why you should have traded for a running back with all those picks. I don't know. Just my 2 cents. Uh, Make sure that you're always thinking if you don't think there's a trade that can make your team better, you were basically saying at all times, I have the best possible optimal team. I can promise you that's not the case. There's always a deal to be made, and there's always a second move to be made. That's why you've been seeing me toss out offers for Tyreek and Chris Godwin, is because, look, I don't need him right now, but I also don't have to play him for a full week. I have another week to trade that player. Um, Maybe I can use that player to go get somebody else. And that's kind of what I've been thinking as I sit here with 10 first round picks. So thanks for listening to the power rankings today, guys. If you disagree with any of my rankings, please let me know. Again, if you're still here, I'm going to recap it one more time. First, Will. Second, Austin. Third, Zach. Fourth, Jacob. Fifth, Jonah. Sixth, Blake. Seventh, Matt. Eighth, Jordan. Ninth, Alec. I'm at 10. Xander 11, and Grant at 12. That will conclude the week 3 power rankings. I'll be back next week to tell you about the changes.